Awesome. Hi, everyone. So glad to see you again. We're back. I appreciate everyone jumping on this call. Again, welcome to the ThinkDutchess Gears program run by us, HVCI, the Hudson Valley Center for Innovation. I'm Bryn, and this week I'm emceeing with maybe Danny if he jumps on, but otherwise I've got two great guests with us. Daniel and Susan, and Pam's here and Paul's also here. So we're all going to ping pong back and forth about our discussion today. And so this program, just as a reminder, is brought to you by ThinkDutchess. It's going to be a podcast format. So we're just sharing our own experiences as entrepreneurs. I'm hoping people will jump in with some questions here and there. We're going to record today again, so you'll see that if you miss it and you're watching us as recorded, live thing, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. And so we're going to talk about actually navigating where to reach your customer today. We talked a lot about knowing your customer. We've got customer personas, unlock. We discussed brand. And this week, I want to talk a little bit about when you start your business, we make assumptions around our customers, right? We have to kind of do that, even if we do the research for it. That's fine. We've got to start somewhere. And so as you grow, you really do start to figure out what the real challenges are, or what problems you're solving for, or what people like and dislike about your products or brand. And so then we're going to talk about how we meet our customers where they're at once we know a little bit more about their demographics and where to meet them actually both like emotionally and physically out in the world. And so I'm going to also introduce Daniel now. Daniel and Susan are our guests today, both entrepreneurs in their own right. Daniel, maybe you want to give us a quick intro, probably better than I can, to talk a little bit about Clothesline.
All right, yeah, thanks, and hello, everybody. I'm coming from Reno, Nevada, but normally I'm in the Hudson Valley like you guys, and I spent a lot of time with the gang from HVCI when we first started out. So I'm thankful to be back talking, to the group and to see, some friendly faces online. But yeah, so Clothesline, it's an app-based peer-to-peer marketplace for laundry. Basically, what we did was we took Manhattan-level laundry outsourcing and we're democratizing it for the rest of the world. And so essentially what we did was there's only in New York City, it's very easy for people to go to the bottom of their apartment and drop off their laundry at a laundromat and get their laundry outsourced so that they can free up their time for other things. But in the rest of the United States, that's not the case. There's only 18,000 laundromats in the entire United States, and 33% of them are in New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles. And so the rest of the world just doesn't have access to that capabilities, but they still need it, right? Like the reason why people are so interested in dropping off their laundry in New York City is because they have other things that they need to do. And so we've taken that ability to outsource your laundry so that you can free up your time, and we brought it to the gig economy. But in order to do it, we really kind of revamped the gig economy. Like we did not want to have a marketplace where we were simply just taking advantage of the labor in the gig economy. So what we did was we kind of created a care.com version of a marketplace where our service providers, who we call clothesliners, are able to have a space where they can promote themselves and they can be a real person on our marketplace. And so they can connect with their customers and the customers can connect with them. And it provides for like a very personal relationship, which is really needed when you're talking about laundry, because laundry itself is really personal and private to a lot of people. And so we built that in Goshen during the COVID time, and we launched it in the Hudson Valley. So we're basically everywhere from Saratoga all the way down to Westchester and northern New Jersey. And we were about to go into like Long Island and the outer boroughs when we were accepted into a national accelerator program, which we're one of 20 companies out of a batch of 1,500 different companies that applied for the program. And we were accepted and got we moved out here to Reno for a couple months to be a part of this program. And while we were here, we're like, well, we're going to open up Reno, we're going to open up Vegas, we're going to test whether or not this thing can be scalable on a national level. And it's been great. And so, like, that's who we are and where we're at. I know we're going to talk about marketing. And so later on, I'll tell you kind of that story about that.
Yeah. And I'm interested also in just navigating your customer on the East Coast as opposed to a different location and what that actually looks like. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, fascinating. Susan Berman is also here with us. Susan, do you want to give us a quick rundown also?
Sure. So when I was 26, I came up with an idea to make hair accessories with snaps, and I made these silk flowers that were interchangeable. Not sure why, but I decided it was an amazing idea, and I was starting a business. Went out, started getting orders from stores all over Manhattan. I had just gotten into business school, so I ran my business while I was in business school. Soon learned that nobody wanted to merchandise the snap parts, and so that evolved. When I graduated from business school, I got a big order from Barney's and decided I had to run with it. I ended up growing it to be an international brand. I didn't do everything the right way, and I learned a lot. I was very successful. I sold all over Japan and Europe and all over the US. And I learned as I went along because I had no experience in the fashion industry. But from what I learned, if I did it again, I would do it completely differently. So I have a lot of good knowledge out of that. I also own an exercise studio, and I now work with small business owners, consulting, helping them build business foundations and strategies for growth.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
So I guess let's start out with, maybe we'll just start talking about customer segmentation. And so maybe that's where we start, Daniel. It's like you knew that your customer in the Hudson Valley looked a particular way. You knew where they were. You knew what what problems you were solving for, and then what it looks like now with the different demographic out, in Reno. And then Susan, as well, I'll pose that question to you. It's like you had this great idea. You kind of had an idea of who you might be selling to, and did that change over time? And so what are the different customer segments? I think is where we want to go next.
All right. I mean, do you want me to start?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start off by saying I thought I knew who my customer was, right?
Right.
And that's part of the process, and that's one of the things actually. Oh, look who's joined us, Danny. Danny, nice to see you there.
Hi, Danny.
He might be frozen, but anyways, it's funny that he joins because I like getting to know who our customer. So when we first started our journey, we thought who our customer was. We thought we knew the demographic, the socioeconomic status of them and their family. We thought we understood, who were going to be the people who outsource their laundry, and like what the pay scale is for that kind of service. And then we took that information that we had researched and kind of done surveys on, and we brought it to HVCI, and we tried to validate it through interviews and stuff like that. And it worked, right? It worked. Like initially, our customer was that person that we had identified. But what we found was, as we were going through the process and as we were doing our marketing, that our customer base was much broader. And so one of the things that I really need to that one of the biggest lessons that we learned through our journey was like, you have to understand who like your first customer is, but you have to always be paying attention to who all your customers are, and be willing to accept that your first idea is not the final idea. It's got to change, and you have to be okay with that, so that you can like listen to the winds of change, for lack of a better term. And so what we ended up finding out was it wasn't just moms and older people in a certain socioeconomic range. It was actually a much broader region. Like, this is a major problem. The fact that people who are in families, or young professionals, or older people have a pain point around laundry, and that it takes up a lot of their free time. And so they spend their week working, and then they spend their weekend doing chores, and they've been able to outsource those chores for the most part, right? So nobody's mowing their lawn anymore. Like most people aren't mowing their lawn anymore, and like some people aren't doing their grocery shopping anymore. But because of the lack of laundromats in the United States and the access to them, people weren't outsourcing their laundry, even though 50% of the people in the United States identify laundry as their least favorite chore. And I mean, the only thing that comes even close is washing the dishes, and it's not like you could literally do anything about that, right? So we had to know that, right? We had to know, one, do people hate this? Is there an opportunity for them to outsource? What's the price point that we're going to, that we're going to put this at that's fair for our customers and also fair for our service providers? And we did a lot of that work through some stuff that Danny and the guys over at HVCI had helped us kind of figure out. But we also did it by just messing around with our marketing, and then we'll go into our marketing plan later. But I'll let Susan kind of talk about who her customer was for a little bit. And
so I had a similar experience, just having to listen to who my customers. I started with this idea of snaps, which worked for a while. And when I started getting into the bigger stores, no one wanted to merchandise the snaps. So I had to change the name of my company and everything about it. It was still the same designs, but I had to change the way I was thinking about it. And it became actually a much more upscale product because it didn't have the snaps. And my buyers really drove my business. My first order at Barney's, they said, "We love your fabric. Can you make hand knotted silk fringe scarves?" So I said, okay. I went out and tried to find a manufacturer who made them, and I worked with him. And then I started working with another store, and I worked really closely with the buyer who wanted me to make patchwork scarves. So I made patchwork scarves out of old kimonos and out of velvet and silk, and it became their biggest seller. And so my brand grew into a real luxury brand, and it wasn't necessarily what I started thinking about how it would be. I went to every store there was, and that was just seemed to be where my product fit. And then later on, I did a lot of private label for stores like Anthropologie and Ann Taylor, where I had to lower my price and work with buyers to fit into what their customer network was. So for me, it was really about listening to my buyers and my customers, who, when I did trade shows, I learned about what they wanted, and people were very eager to tell me what they thought. I had one woman who looked at a scarf and said, "This is just a slab of fabric." And that was an interesting way of describing it. So you have to take the good, the bad, and the ugly when you're listening to your customers, and have a very thick skin, because sometimes they'll tell you things that you never wanted to hear, and sometimes, but it's always so important to listen to what they're saying, because it's not always what you had in your head. And I never would have dreamed that my business would have evolved the way it did. And I just had to listen to what people were asking for and be willing and able to pivot.
Yeah. How do you reconcile that when you're like, but my vision and the mission is this, right? So how do you reconcile that as like a young entrepreneur?
For me, I think it was just so exciting to be working with these stores and to be in these stores. And so I think that I just went with it. I wasn't so attached to my original idea. And I think that part of me could not believe that I was getting these orders and working with all of these stores, and they all wanted my product. So I think part of it was just like, I'll do anything that anybody wants, because this is so exciting. So, and that changed a little bit about as time went on. We can talk about that later, about really being true to your brand and who you are, because you can't be everything to everybody. And I think that's something that some entrepreneurs get stuck in, that they want to be everything to everybody, and you can't. So,
yeah. And then that becomes talking about like a niche, right? So I think that there's a lot of like jargon out there about like finding your niche customer. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, but I myself, like, it took me a while to get to the point of understanding that I did have a niche, and then that was okay, because I'm like, but there's so many people that need my help, right? Or there's so many people that could use this laundry service. How do I make it accessible to everybody? Because like, I don't want to just serve one particular type of person. But what do how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that, one of the best epiphanies that I had in this whole entire journey was like understanding that some people aren't your customer, and they'll tell you right at the very beginning, and that's fine, right? It actually makes life so much easier to not have to spend an hour trying to convince somebody that they want to outsource their laundry. I mean, in my mind, it makes sense, right? I mean, you get to have your weekend back, you get to, so for all those reasons, I'm like, yeah, this is great for $20. Like, why wouldn't I do it? But if somebody's like, oh, I do my own laundry, blah, it's like, okay, that's great, right? Like, then now I know I can use that time I would have spent trying to argue for something else to, somebody else who maybe is on the fence, or somebody who's kind of like debating whether or not they want to do it. So the best gift that anybody can give you is to tell you that they're not your customer right away, and then you can move on to the next person. Because trying to convince somebody who will never be your customer to be your customer, well, it is a rabbit hole that every entrepreneur will go down, and it is brutal.
Yeah, I'm still in the phase of I don't like rejection, So I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to use my services? What are you talking about? So but getting there, in terms of being, it's not about me, right? Like, and it never was. I think we all start businesses, and it's somehow about us. And then as you grow, you're like, this has nothing to do with me. And thinking about it that way is much easier.
One of the things we used to say in the Marine Corps, I was a helicopter pilot in the Marine Corps, but one of the things one of my first commanding officers told me was that you should never fall in love with your plan, right? And I took that to heart right as a young lieutenant, and I hold on to it now as, the CEO of this company. But if you're not in love with your plan, then you're open for it to change. If you do love it, if if you're going to put a tattoo of it, or it's going to be your lock screen instead of your kids, then it's going to be a long road to take it where it needs to go, because it needs to breathe and change along the way, and you can't love it. Like, you want to have passion about it, but you can't be in love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's a bit, I was just going to comment on that to you guys, and talk about that. It's sort of a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? That you don't want to be too narrow. Daniel, as you were saying, you thought it was just, a certain type of person, and then you realized it was broader. But you literally can't be everything to everybody. So you've got to sort of find that balance, because when you go to actually doing your marketing and you're going to target your customers, where do you go? If it's so broad, you don't, and also for your brand and for, who you're trying to communicate with. So there's finding that sweet spot, I guess.
Yeah. And people are going to, go ahead, Susan.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, people are going to want to make you be something that you're not, right? They're going to have a great idea. They're going to see your vision, and they're like, oh, great idea. I mean, right at the very beginning, people are like, oh yeah, you can do laundry, but you can also do this and that. I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do laundry, and we're going to do laundry until it's super successful. And then after that, we might do something else. But people are going to constantly be telling you to do something more than what you're doing. And like, that's where you dig in. It's not like who your customer is or how you talk to them or whatever. But if somebody wants you to do something other than what you're doing and what your passion is, then you have to be able to say, no, I'm not going to go that way. Even if they're like, oh, I'll invest, money in yours. It's like, okay, yeah, but I'm still not going that way.
I agree. I think saying no becomes really important as you get bigger. I made all my accessories were fabric based, and I had stores that wanted me to make jeweled hair accessories, and I would have had to hire a jeweler and a solderer, and I said no. And there are also something I find that a lot of businesses get lost in, is that the lure of a really big order is always so exciting, but they forget to look at their costs. And Anthropologie used to place huge orders with me, but I'd have to lower my cost and change my products a little bit and white label them because I didn't want it to represent my brand because they were charging a lot less. But I think a lot of business owners forget to look. They are so excited about this huge order, as I was. But when you really started looking at the costs and the fact that they're going to charge you for tickets and they're going to charge you to ticket every piece and you have to ship them in bags of 3s and all the time that goes in, that sometimes you have to say no. And I think that that's a hard place to be. But you have to protect yourself and say no, because sometimes you're not going to win in situations like that. And it's really self-reflecting. You really have to take the time before you say yes to everybody to decide what's right for you in your business.
Yeah, and you'll lose sleep on that. I'm sure you lost sleep on that, Susan. I lost
lots
sleep.
of sleep.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of sleep.
Yeah. We first launched right in the beginning of last year. And so we were going into like the camp season in the Hudson Valley, which is crazy. And so we had some camps reach out to us and they're like, "Oh, can you do the laundry for us?" They're like searching for new providers. And we were like always so excited because it was like hundreds and hundreds of bags of laundry. And we spent so much time trying to figure out if we could do that. And we knew we couldn't. Right from the very beginning, we knew we couldn't do it because our service providers are real life people. They're usually moms or dads or somebody in the community. They just couldn't do it. And we tried to make it work. And it was just such a waste, but it was a learning experience because then we were like, okay, now we know exactly like what our capabilities are, right? But you definitely, you try to make it work.
And you have to be, for me, it was production, for you, it's service providers, but you have to make sure you have the people in place. I have so many businesses that come to me and want to sell to the big stores and want to be in Bloomingdale's. And I tell them to run in the other direction as fast as they possibly can, only because those stores can make or break you in 5 minutes and people don't realize how much money you have to put up to actually produce the order. And then they won't pay you in time. And do you have enough production capability set up to make those orders? And what if they reorder? And that's a huge problem that people have to really have in place. Not a problem, but you have to know that you're capable of making what people are going to ask for and do it the right way. So you're going to be, the reflection of who you are is going to be the quality, showing the quality that you want it to show. So
yeah. All right, let's talk about some marketing though. Let's get into the good stuff here.
Switch to talk about marketing. And so, okay, so we know we've done a little bit of research. Maybe we've been in business now for a couple of years. We thought it was something else. It turns out it's something very different than that. We're now like chugging along and we've tried a bunch of different marketing strategies. And so, are the marketing strategies working for you today? Again, now that your customer is maybe this other segment, people out in Reno, does that strategy, those marketing strategies work for them out there? Talk to me a little bit about the steps in which, when you started, what you were doing for marketing, and with very little budget, right? You have little budget at the beginning.
Yeah.
I personally
Always.
I have my marketing right now is referrals, and it's just local, and that's all I've kind of got at the moment. And we talked a little bit, Daniel, yesterday about like optimizing SEO so you can get marketing correct. So you're reaching the right people. But yeah, talk to us a little bit about how you started marketing in the beginning with very little budget, what you can do with like a small budget, $500 a month, and where you see your marketing strategies changing in the near future.
All right. So, I mean, the first thing I want to say is I'm not a marketing guy, right? I have a political science degree. I have a master's in political science. I am not a marketer. But what I will say is marketing is as nebulous as you can imagine, right? And I will be honest that we have been in business, full steam business, for about a year. We've been around for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I have fired 3 marketing firms. So I mean, And I take responsibility on that, right? We hired them. We thought that they were going to be good fits, that this was like the right road to go down. And here's the deal. Like, if they're not performing, then you have to move on. And again, it's like not falling in love with your plan. You can't fall in love with your marketing team either. So that's like a failure on my part. Like, we brought on people.
Will you talk about
We
a
gotta
little
learn
bit
from
about
it.
yeah, tell me like the impetus to where you were like, okay, we're at this, what stage were you at where you're like, maybe a marketing firm could help us out? And then what made you, like, how long before you were like, this isn't working, this is not, this isn't in alignment with who we are and what we're doing?
Yeah, so right from the very beginning, we brought on a marketing firm, and that was that was one of our biggest problems, because we hadn't fully defined who we were and who our customer was and how we needed to speak to them. And so we brought on a marketing firm thinking that they were going to help us with that process. And that particular marketing firm, that wasn't their gig, right? And that was, again, my fault. Like, they were data driven. They were about, how do you get online? How do you establish yourself, and how do you drive a certain behavior? That's their marketing niche. They were about downloads and, app conversions, which we thought was our initial drive, because we're an app-based process. But that's not our drive. Our drive is connecting people. And so we were going down that road for like 6 months, paying whatever we were paying to this marketing firm on a monthly basis. And it was probably 6 months of that before we realized, hey, this isn't working out. I mean, yeah, what you guys do, you do really well, but it's not what we do. And so there's a disconnect there. And you have to be willing to say, like, what you guys do really well is not what we're doing. And so we got to move in a different direction. So that was the first thing. The second thing I'll say is, I'm a data guy, and whatever you are doing, whatever marketing strategy that you choose, whatever decision that you go down, you need to know what every single dollar that you spend is doing for your company. Every single dollar. So I'm going to share something with you guys right now, if I can. Do you guys give me the ability to share? Yeah, I'm going to share something with you guys right now.
Anybody remember, you can raise your hand with questions, folks. Please feel free as we're going along here to raise your little hand on the screen.
So I built this spreadsheet right here. This is every single dollar of every single thing that we invest our marketing budget in, and how that returns into our company, and then the percentage and ratio in which that gives us either a positive effect or a negative effect. And I look at this dashboard every day, right? So like I said, I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a brand person. I'm a data person. And so I know if I spend this amount of money, that this is what that return is going to be. And if it doesn't hit that point, then I need to ask a question. And if it does hit that point, I still need to ask a question. And can we be better, or are we not able? Are we doing the best that we possibly can? And so if you're not doing this right at the very beginning, if you're not setting up what your expectation is for your marketing dollar, then you need to stop putting money into marketing. Because marketing is a thing that has a return on investment. And if you're not looking at it like that, then you need to stop doing it until you figure out what your return on investment is supposed to be, and then you can start marketing again. So this is only
this is a pretty complicated for a lot of our businesses. I mean, you've gotten pretty sophisticated with this. Can you sort of call out the essentials of this, because you're a data guy, but what somebody who's starting a business, they're just starting to spend some money on marketing, they're doing a couple of Google ads, like how do you create some, like a simplified version of this for these businesses?
Yeah, so this is actually not, I mean, it looks like a lot because I make sure that it is a lot, but it's really very simple. It's, if I put $1 in, how much revenue do I get out of the dollar? And then how many customers does that dollar equate to? So those are the three big questions that I'm asking myself when I put $1 into marketing: is how many customers does it equate to, and how much revenue does it equate to, right? And how much revenue does that customer equate to? So it's not super complicated. It's just I measure it down very granularly, and that's because I'm in the app business. So I have to measure like downloads and conversions and then cost of acquisition, which everybody should be doing. So essentially, the three main things that you have to measure in your marketing is how much money am I spending? How much does it cost me to acquire a customer? And how much is that customer worth to my company over the lifetime of that customer? So it's CAC, cost of acquisition, and then customer lifetime value. Those are the things that you need to measure. And that's what informs your decisions when you're making your marketing plan is, how do I reach my customers? And then how much is that customer worth to me in the end of the day? And then once you understand that, then yeah, like then you start having fun with marketing, and there's all kinds of really cool things that you can do. But if you're not measuring that, then you're gonna end up just spending a lot of money and not like really figuring out what you did.
So when you were done with the marketing firm, so you started out, using somebody, and then you were like, okay, this isn't working. I'm assuming then you were like, I'm gonna build this spreadsheet so I can.
No, I built the spreadsheet first, right? So I mean, that's what I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands is get a spreadsheet with a couple of things that make sense to whatever your business is, right? I mean, for our business, when you're in the tech world, it's about downloads and conversions and conversion rate and stuff like that. But if you were like a newspaper guy, right? So when I was first a kid, like 12 years old, I had a paper route, right? Then it would be like how many new customers I have, and do they have orders throughout the whole week, or do they only have weekend orders, right? And then how much does that customer mean to my company? And then like, how did I get that customer, or how do I convert that customer? So whatever your business is, start with a few base assumptions. Like if I spend money getting a customer, how much do I want to spend? And then how much is that customer worth to me throughout the lifetime of that customer? So if it's a one-time order and if it costs you $10 and that customer only spends $9, then that's not a great marketing plan, right? But if it costs you $10 and that customer is worth $100, then that's a great investment in your money. So that's the first thing you have to figure out when you're thinking about marketing is how much do you want to spend? How much does a customer cost? And then how much will that customer give you in return? That's all you need. Like your spreadsheet will grow after you figure that out, but those are the ones that you need to have to begin with.
Susan, did you know any of that stuff as you were starting?
I didn't when I started. And one thing I find that a lot of clients who come to me say, I just want to place some Facebook ads because they're not expensive. And
Right.
I just want to, and I say, I don't want you to spend any money. I want to sit, and these people are maybe at a lower, at a more beginning stage than you are, Daniel, but I always want them to really try to grow organically because they don't have the funds to start investing in that kind of advertising. And sometimes they don't know who their customers are. And I say, are your customers on Facebook? And they don't know. So a lot of what Daniel was saying, you need to know who you are before you start spending money. You need to know who your customers are, because you're going to be placing ads on Facebook and your customers are on Instagram. You're wasting your money. So I start really organically with a lot of the smaller businesses, and I have them just, really figure out their own social media, what's going to work. We test out different types of posts. We look at who their customers are and really find out where they're hanging out. And for some of my brands, I work with some fashion brands. I'm helping a woman launch a lingerie line. I tell her to hang out in the changing room of Bloomingdale's lingerie department. Listen to what people want. Listen to who they are. If you're in the food industry, hang out at Whole Foods. And I have somebody who sells honey I'm working with. Go hang out in the honey aisle. See what people are picking. Why are they picking it? Start talking to people. I work with a woman who's like a foot care nurse. And she says she finds her clients in the summer in the supermarket wearing flip-flops. And she says, you need me because your feet look terrible. So, it's just, you have to find where your customers are so that you can start having conversations and really know where they are and who you are before you start spending the money. So I think Daniel's plans are great and amazing. But if you're starting, sometimes if you're before that stage, what's most important is you really know who your customers are and where they're hanging out. And then you know how you're going to target them and advertise. And maybe sometimes a collaboration or a partnership with another type of business is a way to get your name out that you don't have to spend the money if you don't have it yet. And I encourage people to find businesses that complement their businesses or their products all the time, because then you're helping each other grow.
Yeah. Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, no, another key to that is that if you know where your customers are when you decide to actually start advertising online, you, you can be very clear and very specific on where your ad spend goes, both on Google and on Facebook. And so I'll tell a very anecdotal story. I was in San Francisco last week, meeting with some investors, and in San Francisco, I don't know why, because it's 2022, but in San Francisco, they have like a Friends experience, like the whole mock-up of the entire Friends studio. And you can go in there and you can sit at the cup, like the coffee place or whatever. But anyways, I did not go in there, but I walked by it on my way to get on the trolley. And then I got like ads on Facebook for it for days, right? Because that's how geo-specific you can be in Facebook and Google ads. And so if you do what Susan says and you go to a specific supermarket because that's where people buy honey, or you go to a farmer's market, like once you know that, you can drill down into online advertisements and market those people, whether or not they actually buy that product, just by being in the same geolocation as that business is. You can then like hyper focus on those types of people. We do it with laundromats, right? So we are super hyper focused on a laundromat. So if you even walk by a laundromat, you're probably going to get a clothesline ad in your Facebook feed at some point, because knowing where your people are is super important to your online marketing strategy as well.
Yeah, so the marketing strategy for you in the Hudson Valley was like, okay, we Facebook ads, or these are the handful of laundromats that are in and around us. We're going to do some Facebook ads. Is it different in Reno? Like, what have you discovered in a different location? Is it changing? Is the marketing strategy changing?
Yeah, so we don't do Facebook ads anymore. Facebook's super expensive now. Yeah. And really the reason for that is Apple came along and really kind of ruined Facebook's ad model, because they made everything private on the app from your iPhone. I mean, you still have geolocation issues, but nowadays when you sign in from Apple or you sign in from an Apple device, it's really difficult for Facebook to get that information. And so Facebook's trying to relearn how to interact with Apple. So now we do almost all Google ads, which is much more easy to operate. And Google has set up the interface for people who know nothing about ads, so that you can get on there and you can put some ads in there and you can be specific about where you want to be and who your customer is and what their demographic is and where they live. And then the great thing about Google is they optimize your ad spend, right? So if you're spending $100 a month, then they're going to take that $100 and they're going to do their absolute best to try to spend it in the right exact spot that you want it to be based on the information that you gave them. And if you have $10,000, they're going to do the same, right? In fact, I was telling a story to the guys yesterday, anecdotally, that actually when you change your ad budgets on the internet, like on Google Ads, it has a detrimental effect to how effective those ads will run for about a couple months. So you need to make sure that you're like, okay, if I can afford $100 a month, then you need to stick with that for a few months, because if you change it to $200, the algorithms all need to relearn on how to spend $200 as opposed to $100. And what we find is our return on investment in the months when we increase our ad budget goes down significantly by like 20-30%. And then the next month it'll start to rebound and get better and better. But one of the things that everybody needs to understand right off the bat when you're dealing with online ads is It's a learning mechanism and it takes a while for it to do it. So find a budget that you're happy with, that you can maintain for a while, choose that, and then let it run its course. You can't keep messing around with it. Otherwise, you're never going to get the return on investment that you're looking for.
I also think being consistent and you're making sure your messaging is consistent so that people know it's you and it's branded, so that they're looking for you because they know your ad or your post is going to pop up once a week or once a month or 5 days a week. And it's branded and they always recognize it as you. I mean, think about when you're scrolling down on Instagram, you know certain people who you follow before you even really read the post because of the colors or the type of post it is, the type of photograph it is, what it looks like. And that's so important because you want people to be able to pick out your brand. And just another thing in terms of, Daniel is talking about amazing marketing tools once you have the money. But before that, you can also try to reach out to your audience on LinkedIn if you're a service business. And it's so important for people to realize that you're a thought leader in your industry and show them what you know and who you are. And that can be done on LinkedIn really easily. And LinkedIn has become a little bit less serious. So people like to hear your stories and who you are and tell them what you do. And you can start your post with a question that brings people in. That I find that's really useful. For me, I wrote about my hair accessories were on Gossip Girl, and I started it about small businesses not having time to celebrate their wins. So you can turn a post into something where you're going to bring people in with the first question so that it's like, oh yeah, that's me. I want to read more and learn more. And I think that LinkedIn for service businesses is not right for every type of business. It's a great way of really growing your network and allowing people to see that you're a thought leader. And I have gotten so many people reaching out to me through posting on LinkedIn. And I'm not the best poster, but if you're really consistent about it, and it doesn't have to be 5 days a week, but if you write one long post a month and people know to look for it, and it's a consistent post where you use the same picture or something consistent, so they're looking for you once a month and they know you do that. Or if it's 4 days a week, they know you're going to post something different each day of the week, as long as it's consistent, and then they're going to be looking for you if they like what you're saying. So just a whole another way of looking if you don't have the money yet to start spending on Google ads.
So let's talk a little bit then about content. So now you know who your customer is, you know where they're at, you know the channel that you want to be on. And like you said, Susan, I think it's important to pick, maybe you don't feel this way. I feel this way. It's like I picked one, and that was just because as a solopreneur, it's like I can't manage Facebook and Instagram and my LinkedIn. So I just said, okay, I'm going to focus on Instagram. I don't know if you give that feedback to people when you're saying like, just go with LinkedIn. But so, yeah, how do you know which is going to be the great or the best channel for you? Same thing, Daniel, for you, what was, you do Google ads now, but where do you post content, and what kind of content are you thinking about putting out there now that you've evolved into where you're at today? And Susan, same thing for you. You were like, okay, my business, right, is you help small business owners. Like that seems like LinkedIn was an appropriate, place to market for you. But how did you get to that conclusion?
Well, I think if you start, there are charts out there that list, if it will list all the different social media channels and who's looking. So what's the age range? How many times a week is it effective to post? Who are you reaching? Are you reaching people who are buying? Are you reaching people? So those charts, and you can just Google them, are really useful because it gives you an overall view of the different social media outlets and what will be most effective for you. I think if you're a service business, LinkedIn is a great place to be. I think if you're selling a consumer product, often Instagram is the place to be, especially now, but Instagram changes all the time. And now if you don't have reels and you don't post a certain amount of times, and ads are showing up all over the place on Instagram. And I know people whose everything's changed. They used to get thousands and thousands of likes, and now they're getting almost none because of everything has changed. So it's just a matter of really keeping up on how everything's changing, which is a lot. And a lot of clients say to me, I don't have time. This is the first thing to go because I don't have time to do this. And I think once you figure out where your customers are, you just have to plan it out and pick 3 hours a week where you're going to make some content. And I always say it's a good idea to have a list. When you come up with an idea in the middle of the night, which I would write posts before I fall asleep, and then I forget them when I wake up, put a piece of paper by your bed, write down your idea, keep a log of ideas so that it will jog your memory. And even if you're reposting something that you think is really relevant to your clients, sometimes it doesn't always have to be original content. Sometimes it can be a quote. For some reason, quotes happen to perform really well. Find some quotes that are poignant, that have something to do with your business, and put them in a little folder so that you can, if you don't have time for original content, you throw one of those out. If you're writing an article, use that. I'm working with a woman who's a genealogist, and she writes blogs or tells stories about her clients, and that brings people in, and she gets clients through that. So think about the stories of the customers you've had. Even Daniel, for you, I mean, some of the stories of some of your customers and how you've solved their problems would bring people in, because they'll say, oh my God, that's who I am. I need this too. So there's something about just putting yourself out there and telling stories. I don't know if that answered the question 100%, but
Yeah. So I'll piggyback on that, but I mean, I'll say, and this is kind of like my interpretation, but it's a bit of a brutal truth. You have to be everywhere that your customer is when it comes to the internet. So if your customer is on Instagram, then you need to be on Instagram, and you need to find time to post, and you have to post regularly. And if your customer is on LinkedIn, then you have to find time to write an article or something that resonates with them, and you have to post it regularly. It can't be random. If you go on Clothesline's Instagram page and you look at like our main profile, you'll see that like we have things in a column, which is a industry best practice. So like every certain days we post a quote, like Susan was saying, and then we post a picture of our product, and then we post a picture of our service providers, so that you know who we are. And every single time we post, it's the same, right? Our service providers are important to us, our product is important to us, and then things that are inspirational to us and our customers. But you have to be on all of that stuff. And okay, what is that guy's? Maybe Danny or Paul, and it was like Jimmy V or something like that. It's one of these. Yeah, Gary V, right? Gary V talks about this all the time, right? He talks about how, when you're sitting in your bed at night, right before you fall asleep, you have got to get on Instagram or Facebook, and you have to find people that are in the same sphere that you're in, and you have to get on their posts, and you have to like them, and you have to comment on them, and you have to grow your community through actively engaging with the people that may be customers of yours, or even if they're not customers, the people who follow them or talk to them might be customers of yours. And so I spend a lot of time on my phone, and just like liking, and then, hey, this is a great post. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you have to be, in today's day and age, you have to be on every single one of those social media spaces where your customer is. It's just, if you're not, then you're not going to be successful, or as successful as like your competitors are. And I want to kind of feed this into something else about the holistic approach to like your internet presence. So I've talked about this with Bryn and Pam yesterday, something that a lot of people don't recognize. But there's two things also that you have to get done, regardless of what your industry is. You have to have a little blue dot on Google Maps nowadays. If you don't have a little blue dot where your company exists, or if somebody goes on the map in your town and your company name doesn't show up on the Google Maps, you're doing yourself a disservice, because 60% of all business searches are done directly on Google Maps these days. People aren't going onto their web browser anymore and searching for a laundromat near me. If somebody wants a laundromat, they're going on Google Maps and they're searching for laundromats on the map. Somebody wants a cake manufacturer. They're going on Google Maps and they're searching for a bakery in their area. It is incredibly important nowadays to be on that Google Map because that's where people are looking for businesses these days. I mean, we try to be on Google Maps in every single market that we're in. So there'll be like a clothesline in Saratoga and a clothesline in Reno. And it's not hard to do, but it does take time. You have to fill out the forms. They send you like a postcard and you verify it, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to try to get some reviews for your company in that specific geolocation so that your name shows up automatically. But these are the kind of things that, you know, are super important for a holistic presence online, right? That will really help your company regardless, I think, of what industry you're in.
So Daniel, if people,
I just-
sorry,
yeah.
Daniel, if people want to find out what you're talking about, this is generated from Google My Business, correct? So you sign up for Google My Business, and then that triggers a form that you're going to receive, and that is where you set up to get onto Google Maps.
Yeah,
So-
that's where you verify your business.
Okay. And the other
But
thing
it is a
Susan Johnson had a quick
manual
question.
process.
Susan, I was actually thinking about you as he was saying this because I was like, oh, do you have that blue dot? As the
I thought
facility?
we did, but I just looked and we don't. So
So
I'll be doing that when we get off the call.
yeah.
Did you have a question, Susan?
That was it.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so
the
I'll
other
stay
thing
on
that
that.
Daniel
I'll stay on
said,
that.
sorry, the other thing that Daniel said that I thought was interesting and important is that you populate up your Google Maps dot with photos, with information, right, Daniel? That you don't want to just be the dot,
Yeah.
but if people happen to, cruise by it and land on it, you need to have a bunch of data that's in there, right?
Yeah, but not just photos. I talked about this yesterday. I mean, the rest of the gang wasn't on board, but not just photos. I mean, and again, this takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth everybody's consideration. If you put a photo on your website and on your Google My Business, you have to go into the back end of that photo and change the metadata so that it reflects back onto your business. So like a lot of times, in Clothesline, I'll take a picture of a bag of laundry on my front porch. Like I have a subscription to my own business. And so once a week we send out a bag of laundry. And then when it comes back in, I'll take a picture of it. Before that thing goes on the web page or on Instagram or whatever, on the back end of it, it's like, it has all the metadata that I need in order for that picture to then refer back to my company. So if somebody's looking for Clothesline, that picture will show up because I've changed the data on the back. I put my location on there, or at least a close location, right? Goshen, if I'm in Goshen or whatever, you don't have to put your home address or anything, but my location is on there. The time is on there. The company where, that took the picture is on there, so that all those little data, like the way the internet works, it's crazy. It's like this, like Google has like what they have, they call these little bots, and you can imagine like all these little like creatures crawling around the internet, right? And they're just like constantly crawling around the internet, and they're taking data and they're bringing it back to this big database, and then they're sorting through it, and they're making an assumption about businesses based on the data that they find out there on the internet. And so if you're Clothesline and you have 50 pictures out there that say Clothesline, that say Goshen, that say the time of day, then it's like, okay, Clothesline is in Goshen. So when I Google something in Goshen, Clothesline's going to come out. If I just have 50 pictures out there and it's all random data, then those 50 pictures mean absolutely nothing, right? They're not helping you. They're not providing you with something. Yeah, somebody like clicks on your button and they see your pictures and they're like, oh, these are great pictures, but it's not really giving you the benefit that you can get by spending a couple extra minutes and making sure that the data associated with that picture is associated with your company. So really kind of pay attention to that.
And if you have young
It's a bit
adult,
dorky.
sorry, I was going to say, if you have young adult children, if this sounds daunting, if you have young adult children or teenagers, bribe them and get them to do it for you.
I was gonna say, I wonder, we have advisors can help with this, the one-on-one sessions, but I was just thinking to myself, I was like, maybe because I started to think about this and do this for my business, and it is it is daunting and a little confusing. So I'm
Yeah, so this is
Yeah.
where Fiverr comes
Fiverr,
in.
yeah.
I mean, Fiverr, you can get somebody in Pakistan or India for $5 an hour, a virtual assistant to do this for you all day long. It'll cost
Yep.
you $40, and at the end of the day, every one of your pictures will have the proper data that it needs to have. The metadata will be on there, and it costs you like $40. I mean, this is, and I can't talk about Fiverr enough. Anytime Camden's my co-founder, think that we're over, like we can't get something done, we go on
Mhm.
Fiverr and we hire somebody for $20 or $30 and they'll
Love it.
do it, right? They can't have the same passion for your company as you need to, but they can definitely do data work on the back end of one of your pictures, or they can make sure that their tagline on your website matches the requirements that Google needs in order for you to be successful. And so
Daniel,
make
can
use
you
of
put
Fiverr.
can
I
you
have
put the
I
link
can do it.
Fiverr onto into the chat? I don't know if anybody else
I
has
don't-
used Fiverr.
I've got it.
Anybody? I'm not seeing all the faces, but
I have used Fiverr for like my VA. Actually, I have a VA who helps me grow my Instagram audience, and she's really good. And yeah, for really, affordable rates. She's like, she does what you were talking about, Daniel, like likes other posts, people to follow my business Instagram, and then my personal Instagram. She messages a lot of people, so that's how I start lots of conversations. But that's where I found her,
Because one thing really
Yeah, and if you
important.
teach her,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, if you teach her how to do this or you ask her to do that, I'm sure that she can either, clean up the back end of your profile
Yeah.
or your website, or she'll know somebody in her area that can do it, and then they just put you onto each other. But Fiverr's your best friend, especially when it comes to like this holistic approach to marketing and having everything in line. It is, when I first started, I thought it was all nonsense, but it is unbelievably critical how important it is that every piece of information that refers to your company that's online aligns with each other, and it's easy to get off track, right? It's easy for your website to say that you're open 24 hours, but then your Google Maps thing to say that you're only open between 7 and 5 in the afternoon. And if those two things don't, Google's disregarding some of one of those two things gets disregarded when the little bots are crawling all over the internet, and that's not what you want.
And I was just going to say, as a small business owner, that one of the most important things is to realize you can't do everything by yourself. So outsourcing the things that you don't need to do yourself, where you don't need your personality or you yourself, it's outsourcing can save your life. And I think we all think we can do everything ourselves. And I definitely went through that with my business. And in the end, outsourcing saves you. So don't try to do everything yourself.
Awesome.
And it's cheap.
Yeah, if you've got a little bit of spend, that's where I would go also. Yeah. Great. Any questions before we wrap up? Anybody? No? All good? Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Daniel and Susan. I think this was a really helpful conversation, and I'm jumping on Fiverr after this because I know that I need to tag all my photos. And yeah, and Daniel, the other point that you made yesterday was when you guys start doing this, it does take a little bit of time. So like I just redid my website, and so I'm not popping up yet, but I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks I will. And so that's just something to keep in mind. But if there's no question. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to make sure that, since Danny and Paul and you guys are on the line, you need to get HVCI to hook you guys up with an Ahrefs membership, right? Because you're never going to be on the front page if you don't have the right tagline, if you don't have the right keywords, if you don't have all the data on your website aligned, you will never get on the front line, and you're not going to know what that information is unless you go to one of these websites like Ahrefs, and it will tell you exactly what you need to put on your website in order to be successful. You can't just figure it out on your own. That kind of information is You know, it's proprietary to Google, and you have to go through one of these third-party companies to like really help you understand what you need to do in order to get on that front page. And if you're not on the front page, you're not on Google. I mean, that's the
Daniel,
truth.
Can you put that that link in the chat as well? This is a basically a service that you can subscribe to. You can have it ongoing month to month, or you can go, you know, purchase it at certain times. But this gives you data about pretty much everything related to around your business, around your competitors' businesses. And it's just really abundant data that's available out there.
Yeah.
Really
It
important.
tells you, it will tell you who you are from an online perspective. Like, it will tell you who you are and where you sit on an online perspective. And then it allows you to see who you are in comparison to who your competitors are and who they are and why they're better than you or why you're better than them. And then from that data, from that information, then you can optimize your website, you can optimize your blue dot on Google Maps, you can really make yourself better. But you can't find that information out without one of these services. Like, Google's never going to tell you that. You'll just keep floundering and floundering and floundering. So that's why HVCI needs to pony up the $200 a month and let everybody get this information.
That's right.
It used to be free for 10 days. It used to be free for 10 days, so we would log on with a different email address like once every couple months to see how we were doing, but now it's not free anymore.
So funny. Great. Well, thank you so much for everybody being here. Again, it's recorded. I'm going to put all of this into our chat in Slack, and email me at Bryn@HVCI if you need any other help with getting one-on-ones, or you still need to get in Slack, or you have questions about sounding boards. This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate both of your time.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, guys.